be starting in a few seconds when I see the symbol. And it's working. So, hi everybody, welcome back to another video about a polyglot who explains a bit their methodology or how they learn foreign languages. So I'm here with yet another polyglot who has a different method than the first video I had with John. So I'll try for the different videos to have, let's say, very different methodologies, tips and tricks, advice, and so on. Language learning program, whatever that could help and inspire others, whatever your level and your experience in language learning. Here is my second guest. Can you first begin with a short introduction about yourself and possible details you think could be interesting for the audience to know?
Definitely, definitely. First of all, hi everyone, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Ilker Aslan. I'm originally from Istanbul, Turkey, and I currently live in Zurich, Switzerland, where I have been for the last 16 years, give or take. I can't believe it's been that long, actually. So I've been living abroad for well over half of my life. I left Turkey in 1999, right after high school, and I've been studying, working, interning, doing paid internships, unpaid internships, and finally started my career in Switzerland. So since I left Turkey, I lived in Germany, US, Denmark, beautiful Belgium, and Switzerland. And on the way, I got myself in and out of trouble in various languages. So by learning. By living in those languages. So that really gave me a unique advantage of having to study just from the books. I work in the, I don't work as a professional linguist per se. I'm very much into languages, linguistics, sociolinguistics, but I work in the insurance industry. But what I'd like to talk about is I don't want to tell you about my language teaching per se. I'm more of a practitioner. I use those languages in my life. So I use on a daily basis English, German, French, Turkish, Danish, Dutch, not very often, but I occasionally speak with Belgian clients, and Spanish and Greek. And for the last 4-5 years, I've been dabbling with multiple languages, at least not to learn them, but really improve my fluency in those languages. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually working with I'm working on Greek, which, as I said, I've been working on for the last 4 or 5 years, and I'm trying to improve my level of French comprehension. Not so much for the standard French, but understanding dialects and accents, like, from especially various forms of Canadian French. I'm working on Swedish, and I'm trying to translate them in and out of Turkish as well, using my as this is my native language.
Yeah, so you're into different languages at the same time. So
true. So my native language is a non-Indo-European language, so it's not really compatible, or at least the flow of the language, at least the logic of the language, is not really similar to what you might find in the other target languages that I use, because some of them are Romance, some of them are Germanic, but overall they're Indo-European languages, which kind of have the same logic to it, with of course big differences to note. As I talked to you before, and as I watched your video before, every people have their different preferences to improve their language fluency, proficiency, understanding, or staying abreast of the popular culture. Some people just change the subtitles while they're watching Netflix to practice. Some use Duolingo. I always see friends who post like 100-day streaks, 1,000-day streaks. I'm not really that patient to focus myself on an app. So the method that I use when I'm practicing my languages is, you can replicate this to any other language, basically, not just the ones that I use, but is to translate song lyrics. And when I translate song lyrics, it really gives me various advantages as opposed to only watching popular shows on Netflix or reading with a dictionary, trying to understand a book or a news article. It really gives you the flow and the prosody of the language. So you really get the rhythm of it. And it really forces you to think not only not only in the target language that you're trying to learn, but in the secondary language in which you're trying to translate. For example, I do translations from Greek to French or Swedish into Greek, which takes me a lot longer actually, because I'm not trying to translate word to word, but it's sometimes the biggest challenge that I encounter with, and the biggest reward is to understand the metaphors used in certain languages, which really gives you, sometimes you really get into the etymology of the words and like, does this fit here? Does that really flow into what the singer is trying to say? For example, in Turkish, we have so many ways to say heart. There's one kind of like the motherly love, there's the brotherly love, there's the love that you feel to your lover, love that you feel to your child, etc. So you really have to understand these nuances, and it's been very rewarding. So if you are into really want to understand the poetic side of the language, highly recommend start with easy, somewhat easy for me at least, those songs. So I pick like target, well, at least I try to stick to classical singers that I like, at least. For example, I've been trying to translate this Dutch hip hop song Paramaribo into Greek, which is, it's really hard to do it, but I can give you the link that you can post it. I'm sure your Dutch listeners would remember it. Or stick with classical singers from the target language. So if I'm doing a translation from French, I try to pick songs from Jacques Brel, or something that really have a clear flow, not.
How do you judge the quality of the translation? How do you know that you understood the word or the expression correctly when you get to the language in which you translate it?
Oh, easy. I ask my native speaker friends. So at the end, I finish everything. So it's sort of like proofreading. So I have the target language and my translation. And once I finish it, it doesn't have to be like 2 pages or something. It could be like 2 stanzas. Or 3 stanzas. The songs, they're usually between 3 to 4 minutes. Mm-hmm. We are not translating a poem. Sometimes the poems are the lyrics themselves. But after I finish everything, I pitched it to a native speaker friend of mine. Thanks to the Hyper Polyglot Association, those native speakers are dime a dozen. So show them, does this? How's the translation? Usually I get good feedback. Sometimes you say, well, you can say it like this, but it would be better if you flip it the other way around, or the word choice would be a little different given the context. And that's a learning opportunity. So I find a lot more, those easy readers that we used to read in like elementary school or high school or middle school when you were first learning, English, French, German, whatever. You had you had the story on the back. You had the vocabulary section. So reading something like this is great to begin with, but once you get a little more, I don't want to say old, but once you get more mature in your language learning, you're really looking into like different ways. It's like I started learning languages in like early 90s, and back then there was no social media. Trying to find lyrics to a foreign song was a major pain in the neck. And now it's easy. Like on Spotify has this option where you can see the lyrics directly under the song. So
Yeah.
for those who haven't bought premium, so this is not a Spotify sponsored commercial, but you have the lyrics there.
Yeah.
And you get the lyrics and translate it on your own first. And then with second, go through with a dictionary or. But to be able to do this, you need at least, I would say, B1 fluency. Of course,
So
if you're just taking baby steps in the language, it's really hard to do those translations, but don't let this stop you.
is to improve the language. So, and do you, when you translate, do you go off from the music itself, or do you use the lyrics of the original music?
I use the music itself. So I try to squeeze the translation into the melody. That's what I mean by prosody, that the lyrics that I'm translating should at least match with the flow. Like, for example, if you're translating something from Greek that's 8 words long, I cannot be translating that into Turkish or Danish or French that will be 20 words long. So I have to squeeze the meaning. So I have to be very careful in terms of word budgeting, as I call it, that you squeeze your translation so that it could fit. So if it's ever translated, if it's ever sung in another language, it would somewhat match with the melody.
But how do you make this melody in the target language, in the language into which you're translating? Because you're writing on paper, it does not end up as a oral message, as an or as a song. So you listen to something you listen to something in the language you're learning,
right,
and translate what you hear on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And do you translate it always to your native language, or do you choose other combinations of languages in order to sing the others?
No, I completely ignore my native language.
So
I have to. I cannot use Turkish, but otherwise it's twice the work. I have to translate everything into Turkish, and from Turkish projected onto, like if I'm translating between German, like Greek to German, I don't do it from Greek to Turkish, Turkish to German. Or if I'm translating something from French, I don't do it French to Turkish, Turkish to Danish or Dutch or whatever I try to do. So I try to think in the language that I'm translating into.
And why do you choose to translate in a language which is not your native one? Why
That really,
two foreign languages that for which you don't master either of them?
actually, you do, because it's like well, I hate using that phrase, but it's like you know. Well, I'll use another one. It's less effort because I'm quite time constrained, so I don't have time to study like 2 hours of Dutch and 2 hours of French and 2 hours of Greek in a given day. So I try to combine those and keep it relevant for me. So in that way, if I'm translating anything into Greek or from Greek into French or Swedish, etc., it's practicing both language skills. Because once I read it, it's okay. Now I have to do it in Greek. I have to think in Greek, and then okay, now switch back on, translate this into German.
And what if so let's say you translate from Greek to German, and you ask a native speaker to check the German translation. Let's say that the native speaker, does not get something. How can they know what is meant? Do they go to the original Greek music and use Google Translate to check themselves what is meant?
I see your question. In such cases, I check with the native speakers of my source language. If I'm unsure about the meaning of something, it's like, okay, over here there's this word. What does it mean exactly? Not just the word. Otherwise, I can just look it up on Google Translate or find a word in any given dictionary. But if it's contextually different meaning in a song, I first cross-check it with a native speaker of the source language. Then my translation of my target language would be able to validate that. Because first of all, I need to know what the source language says. If I'm unsure about anything, I check it with the native speaker.
So you often need external help from somebody else.
Yeah, but that's why God created Facebook. I was like, hi, friend, or WhatsApp groups. Like, hey, does anyone explain me any native speakers? That's the great thing about our club. You can. There's so many people
to make sure of how it works, because it's a method I've never heard about. So John's method about learning about self-immersion, I know it because I use it, but I don't often use so much music when learning. I listen to music in other languages, but that's for the fun. I've already worked with music, but it's clearly not my main method. So I didn't know this method, so I tried to make sure I understand how it works.
I have to tell you something. The beauty about learning with music is it sticks in your head.
Yeah, it does.
It really does. It really does. I have two daughters, and ever since they were born, I've been excessively exposed to Swiss German nursery rhymes. And I came to this country well, I spoke German, but I didn't know a word of Swiss German at all. And when you're exposed to music, it's really like a memory burn. Mm-hmm. You get the sounds, the phonemes, the pitches. Some languages are more pitch oriented, like Swedish or Cantonese or Mandarin, etc. So music really helps you it stays in your head longer.
And so once you've translated from Greek to German, and you've checked with a native speaker if the text in German is correct, and you know that you understand the whole thing about the text in both languages, the work is over, right? Or is there another extra step? Just like in Luca's method of bi-directional translation method, where it's first from the target language to your native and then the other way around. And that's where it's interesting because you can compare your own translation with the original document. Do you have that kind of step, or once you get to the German correction, it's over?
My work is pretty much done at that stage. I mean, you can take your translation, translate it into another language, but my biggest advantage is I've had a wonderful Greek teacher, Angeliki Duri. Hi, Angeliki. I'm sure she'll be watching this video. So she's not just a teacher to me. She's a great friend of mine. So whenever I have such questions, I usually pitch it to her. It could be anytime, any day. She's she's a great master in the language, and so when I translate anything from the source language, and if I don't get it, there's always a native speaker. And secondly, one thing that I would advise is a strong word, recommend to people who'd like to practice this method is, we all have our favorite kinds of music. It could be rock, it could be hip hop, it could be if you're doing Italian, maybe you can even try opera to have a little bit of a change. But there's so much material out there, and Spotify is an enormous help. I mean, YouTube, we all know about YouTube. You can find anything, but now Spotify came out with this new function where you can see the lyrics of the song you're listening to. So you can follow it, even if you're not so familiar with the language. You can follow the lyrics, at least get the beat of the language, the pitches, the accentuation, and then you take it from there. I have my favorite singers. Everyone's got a different taste, and it's trial and error. No one's gonna grade you or anything.
Why do you choose to use the music itself, like the song, the spoken version of the text, instead of using the subtitles, the lyrics? Is it because you want to use it to improve your listening and how the prosody works and how the musicality of the language works, so that you can also learn that one? or is there another reason? Because it's pretty difficult, right, to understand, because even in our native language, sometimes, well, I know that in English, because I don't often listen to French musics, but even in English, which is my strongest foreign language, I've already come across musics for which I'm not sure what they say. And I need to look at the lyrics. And when I look at it afterwards, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it, because I have a good level. But if I try in any language, there are musics where it might be hard to understand a few words because of the melody, because of the vocab. How do you cope with that? Because it's pretty difficult.
It's slang. Slang is the hardest part. Slang is the hardest part. For example, remember this French hip hop group back in early 2010? I think it came out in 2011, like Ghetto People. Anyhow, so they were really protest. The lyrics were mainly about French immigration policies, oppression. Mm-hmm. You know, when I first listened to that song, for example, this is what I tried to translate. I listened to the song. I kind of understood. I mean, lyrics I understood, but I didn't understand the social context because I'm not well versed in French domestic policies about immigrant alienation, all those social problems, etc. So it really forces you to understand the social issue behind it.
So it's also
otherwise, yeah, they were talking about like Sarkozy did this and then I was like, oh, what did Sarkozy do? Like I know like Président de la République and everything, but I don't know about it. So it really forces me to be more aware of those issues and ask myself the question, what are these people rapping about?
Okay, so it's also a way to get to know, or get to make research and know more about the culture of the language, its history, whatever.
Definitely. Like, I mean, French hip hop is great, especially if you want to deal with social issues. Hip hop is a great point of reference, but maybe not the first step to start with, because it really, like, they use Valon and they use the slang, so it might be a bit difficult. But for the beginners, I would say start with classical songs that you like, and then work your way gradually. From Jacques Brel to I don't know, like what's popular these days. I'm still, I'm really into hip hop these days in terms of translations. But the challenge of hip hop is it's so fast and they squeeze so much material. The lyrics are enormously long. When you try to translate, it's like an epic translation. In a 4-minute long rap song, you might squeeze in like 8-9 normal songs, and they sing pretty fast. But that really exposes you to learn the slang.
Try to work with
a great way. Otherwise, I don't have the opportunity. Like this is what you had in the in your first video with self immersion. We don't always have the luxury to go and live in another country to practice. I mean, if you're lucky to live in a country like Belgium or Switzerland, where we speak multiple languages and you're surrounded by international people, you can always find people to practice, Italian, French, German, no problem, or way more than that. But if you live in a homogeneous and at least linguistically homogeneous environment, like say you're in Portugal, and everyone speaks Portuguese, right? So this method really allows you to take the best out of online learning by listening to music. Netflix is a great venue. I highly recommend it. I usually watch foreign shows with another subtitle in my target language. These days, I watch like American shows. I watch with Spanish subtitles. Or if it's a French show, I watch it with Spanish subtitles. So that it's practicing both.
Yeah. Especially when you have a number of languages to maintain, then you will try to use something else, like or you would often switch the audio you're listening to. So if I do something and I know I'm going to be busy for 30 minutes, 1 hour, I will make sure that I will change the podcast every 5, 10, 15 minutes.
Absolutely. And it's passive learning at its best.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, one more thing. Sorry, this is we're keeping this entre nous. I always keep a notebook when I'm watching. It could be dark. You don't even have to write legibly, but once you want to remember something, please write it down. You think you're going to remember it, but I guarantee you in 2 hours, that word that you really liked, that hip Spanish word, it's not going to stick. But if you see it again in the morning when you wake up, written in that notebook, it will be there. And that's how I actually learned English. And
can I ask a very last question, because I know that we are going to have to wrap it up in 5 minutes. Could you kind of try to make a comparison between your method and Lucas' bi-directional translation method? Because both are about translating. Lucas translates from the target language to his native one, analyzes the differences, and then turns back from his own translation in his native language to the target language and compares the two versions. I could make another video on that. So since your method is also about translating, what are the advantages and disadvantages of your methods compared to his? Like, how can we see which one works best for us?
Well, the advantages, time-wise, you are really getting bang for your buck. You really save time. And it really forces your brain to think multidimensionally in multiple languages.
Mm-hmm.
Inherently, your target language, you have to push your native language to the background because you have to understand the word. It doesn't matter in which language it is. And it really forces you to use both sides of your brain. Technically, it's not true, but you see what I mean. It forces you to think in those two languages that you're trying to practice. Mm-hmm. Passively and actively. Time-wise is great. The second advantage is it really forces you to learn the slang and in both languages, because languages are liquid things. That they're not. You can't really fit them into a box. It forces you to think in ways that you are not exposed to. They might be singing in a dialect that you're not familiar with, or using different methods of singing where they prolong the vowels or shorten it, etc. So the disadvantages, I can't really think of a big disadvantage, but I think for those who are not so comfortable in not thinking in their own native language, there could be a challenge at the beginning, but I would give it a try, especially if you're learning multiple languages at the same time, because translating into your native language for a few things, that might be okay, but if you want to practice two languages at the same time, this is the best method that I have tried so far.
I would say that maybe a disadvantage is that if you're someone who either doesn't know the polyglot or who's shy. We know that now with the internet we have access to so many people, so much help, or even private tutors. But some people prefer to work on their own and don't like to get help or to ask for other people. So it might be harder for them. But that's just one case that I can think about. But it's true that it's overall to have many advantages.
I mean, no need to be shy. No one's grading you on this. And trust me, native speakers, they're gonna love the effort if you ask them the questions. I do the same thing for a few of my polyglot friends, where we exchange messages in really odd hours because of time difference. They asked me, "Oh, I have a Turkish emergency." I was like, 3 o'clock in the morning. What is that? So I trust me. This is how we learn the language, and this is a practice. We're now trying to pass an exam or something. My goal is not to get I want to get a nice grade if I take the certification exam, but I want to be fluent, conversational, and eloquent in the language. And the best way to do it, as I say, is to learn the poetic side, the musical side of the language. And if you're working with one language only, try Lucas' method. Translate into your native language, But if you are, time constrained as I am, where you are trying to maintain multiple things in your life and you don't have so much time for language learning, watch Netflix, listen to podcasts, read a book, etc. But if you want to do your homework, so to say, translate it into two languages, to and from those languages that you like to learn.
Yeah, that's so well. I will have learned something today. I really didn't know the method, and I thought you would just translate like the lyrics into your native language or something. But
there are websites where you can do that. I mean, there are lyrics websites where you can see.
You have a more specific method than what I had pictured when you explain in a nutshell how it works. But yeah, it's clearly interesting, and I'm sure this will give ideas to other people. And the post is there, so I'll have to go anyway. So I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks a lot for your time and for this discussion, and I will meet the audience again in the next video.
You're welcome. The pleasure was all mine. Thank you, Yum. Take care, huh?
Take care.